Steve Gamache with A Chef Knives to Go quick look product video, and we're looking at the Hinoura Tamashii KU or Kurouchi Gyuto 240mm knife. And this knife has a core steel of Shirogami R white paper number 2 carbon steel. Heat treats about 62 to 63 Rockwell. The construction is a stainless steel cladding with a Kurouchi blacksmith finish over the top of that core steel. And you can see it's a matte finish, but fairly smooth, a little bit of texture to it. Really nicely done in my opinion. And you've got a Kasumi or kind of bead blasted finish on the grind that starts toward the tip. And you can see they polished these edges where the core steel shows up, really kind of a high polish. It's really a cool look to them. And so there's your core steel showing through. I've got a little bit, just a touch of patina going on this one. The weight on this is pretty darn light. These are pretty thin blades. This is not anywhere near as thin as the 210 little brother, but it's still pretty darn thin. The weight on the knife is 171 grams, 6.0 ounces. And the blade length is 9.3 inches, 237, so just slightly under 240. These will all vary a little bit because they're handmade. 15 inches. I'll have to check that spine, but I guess that's probably about right, about 2.1. So these are pretty thin knives. That's what I wrote down, so I guess that's about right. And right above here, and it thins down a little bit over that. I'll maybe say it's 2.5. I think I wrote that down a little bit wrong. But it pretty much keeps it thin until you hit the grind of the blade down here where the tip thins out. And so it's not a huge distal taper on this knife. The height at the heel is 49.2 on this one, so pretty generous. It's just right in the mid kind of normal range for a 240. And the handle is an octagonal ambidextrous U buffalo horn ferrule. Nice fit and finish on it. Not much of a step at all here where the wood meets the buffalo horn, much less than I see on the Moritaka, so they've done a little bit better job on this handle. 3 inches is the circumference right here, pretty standard size. The width of the neck's not huge, so you got plenty of clearance here for your knuckles. No problem there. Balance point on this is a little bit farther forward because it's a pretty light handle, so it's right about in here. It's a bit more blade heavy than the 210, and so your pinch grip's a little bit behind that. So it's got a little bit more of a weighty feel to it than the 210 by quite a margin, although it's not a heavy knife. And here's your edge profile. This is where I mentioned on the 210 video, the 210 is much flatter than this with a much longer heel. This one has quite a bit more belly towards the tip and in the heel area as well. So that's a pretty big difference between these two. They're not just kind of big little clones of each other, the 210 and 240. They're fairly substantially different in those areas. The profile is one of the biggest ones, actually. The balance point as well. So there's your profile. Unlike the 210, which kind of slams into the back and a big long heel for that size knife, this one's more of a gentle curve all the way in with quite a bit of belly towards the tip. So I can get pretty high up before I start hitting the tip on the board. Definitely has a different feel on the board. It's a good performing knife though, and as you can see it's quite thin. So the tip goes through very nicely on things. It's not a total laser like the 210, but it's a really good performing knife. Not too much wedging, fairly non-stick, even though the sides of the blade aren't super textured. But it's just got a good feel on the board, and it's just a nicely executed knife. Great fit and finish, rounded spine choil neck, comfortable out of the box, pretty sharp out of the box. It could probably use a little bit sharper edge, but you can get this stinking sharp if you're decent at sharpening. But it's very usable out of the box. So there you have the Hinoura Tamashii Kurouchi Gyuto 240mm knife.